Never save money. Those were the strangest words I ever heard from my grandfather, a man named James, spoken in a voice roughened by years of regret. He lived in a quiet farming village where days moved slowly and dreams moved even slower. Most mornings, James sat beneath a wide old tree on a wooden chair, staring into the distance as if tomorrow might arrive early if he watched hard enough. People called him lazy. They said he talked more about plans than he ever did about work. "One day I'll open a shop," he'd say. "One day I'll buy land, cows, an easier life." But one day never came. Laughter faded into pity. Even his wife, Margaret, stopped arguing and simply whispered, "Life doesn't survive on dreams. It survives on work." Years passed, and the house grew quieter. One night his grandson Daniel tugged at his sleeve and asked in a small voice, "Grandpa, is there any bread?" Margaret opened the cupboard. It was empty. James stared at the dirt floor, his throat tight. In that moment, he understood something painful. Dreams don't fill stomachs. Ideas don't stop hunger. The next morning, shame pushed him into the fields as a day laborer. The sun punished his skin. His back bent lower each day. His hands cracked and bled. By noon, sweat blurred his vision. "This feels like a chain," he whispered, wiping his brow. At night, they ate beans and 2 thin tortillas. Never more. Daniel would ask, "What did they pay you today, Grandpa?" James would nod and say, "Not much, but it's something." And yet the money never stayed. Medicine took it, food took it, life took it. One afternoon at the village store, James overheard men talking. "The secret is saving," one said. "If you save, you're safe." Those words followed him home. That night, James found a large glass jar and slid it under the bed. Each week, after buying only the bare minimum, he dropped coins into the jar. The sound made him smile. It sounded like hope. When Daniel discovered it, James said proudly, "That's our future." But saving came with hunger. Shoes weren't replaced. Meals grew smaller. Plates were never full. Finally, Margaret broke the silence. "What good is saving if we're starving?" James didn't answer. "Someday you'll understand," he said, though he wasn't sure he did. Months later, the jar was full. James carried it to the market and poured the money onto the table. "3 sacks of corn," he said. The seller shook his head. "Prices went up. This buys 1.5. "Money loses value," the man added calmly. That night, James counted the coins again and again. They never grew. Daniel asked softly, "So, what's the use of saving, Grandpa?" James had no answer. One morning, sitting on the porch, he watched neighbors walk by. One carried eggs, another carried milk. None of them looked afraid. That's when Daniel's old idea returned to him. "What if we buy chickens?" This time, James listened. He spent the last of the money on a few thin chickens. The yard filled with laughter and noise. At first, they collected 1 or 2 eggs a day. They ate some. They sold some. With that money, they bought another chicken. James wrote everything down, careful and focused. Soon, neighbors came to buy eggs. For the first time, work felt meaningful. One afternoon, James held an egg in his palm and said, "This is worth more than a jar of money. It feeds us. It grows." Daniel hugged him. "So you're not lazy anymore?" James smiled through wet eyes. "No, my boy. I finally learned." The jar stayed forgotten under the bed. And when people spoke proudly about saving money, James pointed to the chickens and said, "Saving money is like holding water in your hands. Make it work, even if you start small." That was the lesson of his life. Don't just save money, make it grow.